In the small town of Willow Creek, life moved at a slow pace. People knew each other by name, and stories traveled fast through whispers at the local diner or during evening strolls down Main Street. Among these familiar faces was Maggie Thompson, a woman whose warmth and kindness made her stand out. She wasn't just any resident, she was someone who had weathered storms but always found ways to smile through them. Maggie's life hadn't been easy. Her husband, Tom, passed away unexpectedly when their adopted son, Daniel, was only 5 years old. It was a tough blow for Maggie, but she didn't let grief consume her. Instead, she poured all her energy into raising Daniel, determined to give him the best life possible despite being a single mother. She worked long hours as a nurse, saved every penny, and sacrificed countless nights of rest to ensure Daniel had everything he needed: clothes, school supplies, even soccer practice fees. To Maggie, Daniel was her world, her purpose. As Daniel grew older, things began to change. He became distant, more focused on his ambitions than family dinners or weekend trips. At first, Maggie thought it was normal teenage behavior. Who doesn't go through phases of rebellion? But as the years went by, Daniel's attitude hardened. He stopped calling home unless he needed money or advice about work promotions. Visits became rare, and when they did happen, conversations revolved around his career goals rather than shared memories. By the time Maggie turned 70, she felt like a ghost in Daniel's life. Still, she held on to hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd come around one day. That's why she eagerly anticipated her birthday celebration. She imagined a simple gathering, a cake, some balloons, and perhaps a heartfelt hug from her son. After all, birthdays were special occasions meant for reconnecting with loved ones. But what happened next shattered her heart into pieces. On the morning of her 70th birthday, Maggie woke up early, humming softly to herself. The house smelled of fresh coffee and pancakes, which she had made in anticipation of Daniel's visit. Hours ticked by and there was no sign of him. No text message, no phone call, not even a happy birthday wish. Just as disappointment started creeping in, the doorbell rang. Standing outside was Daniel, dressed sharply in a suit, holding nothing but a briefcase. His expression was unreadable, almost cold. Without waiting to be invited inside, he walked straight to the living room and sat down. Maggie followed, confused, yet hopeful. Maybe he had something big planned. A surprise party, perhaps? "Mom," Daniel began, his voice devoid of emotion. "We need to talk." Her stomach sank. Those words never led to anything good. She sat across from him, clutching her hands together nervously. "What is it?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light. "I've decided it's best if you move to a nursing home," Daniel said matter-of-factly. The words hit Maggie like a punch to the gut. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. All she could do was stare at him, searching his face for some hint of remorse or second-guessing. There was none. "Why?" she finally managed to whisper, her voice trembling. "You're getting older, Mom. You can't take care of yourself anymore. I have responsibilities now, my job, my future. I can't afford to spend time worrying about whether you're okay." His explanation came out mechanical, rehearsed, as though he'd been practicing this speech for weeks. But we're family," Maggie stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Family takes care of each other." Daniel avoided her gaze, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. "It's not personal, Mom. It's practical. Besides, the nursing home is trained. Staff who can provide better care than I ever could." Practical. That word echoed in Maggie's mind long after Daniel left. How could someone reduce decades of love and sacrifice to mere practicality? She spent the rest of the day packing her belongings, her hands shaking with anger and sadness. Each item she placed in the box carried a memory: a photo of Daniel's graduation, a handmade card from his childhood, a scarf she knitted during one particularly cold winter. Every piece reminded her of how much she had given and how little she seemed to receive in return. The nursing home, Pineview, was clean and efficient but lacked warmth. The walls were painted in dull shades of beige, and the air carried the faint scent of disinfectant. Maggie's new room was tiny, barely big enough for a bed, dresser, and chair. As she unpacked her meager possessions, she couldn't help but feel like a burden, an inconvenience shuffled off to make room for someone else's ambitions. That night, lying awake in her unfamiliar bed, Maggie cried silently. She thought about all the sacrifices she had made, all the dreams she had put aside for Daniel's sake. And now, on her 70th birthday, she was alone, abandoned by the very person she had devoted her life to. A week had passed since Maggie moved into Pineview Nursing Home. Life there was quiet, almost painfully so. The days blended together in a blur of scheduled meals, bingo games, and afternoon naps. Maggie tried her best to adjust, but the loneliness gnawed at her constantly. She missed the comfort of her old home, the creaky floorboards, the scent of fresh coffee brewing in the morning, and the memories embedded in every corner. Most of all, she missed feeling like she mattered. The other residents were kind enough, though many kept to themselves. Some spent their days watching TV or flipping through old magazines, while others sat by the window, staring out at the world they no longer felt part of. Maggie wasn't ready to give up on life just yet. She joined in the activities when she could, forcing herself to smile even when her heart ached. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was where dreams went to die. One Tuesday morning, as Maggie sat in the common room sorting through a stack of mail, something unusual caught her eye. It was an envelope with the official seal of the State Lottery Commission. Her brow furrowed as she turned it over in her hands. She hadn't bought a lottery ticket in years, not since Tom used to pick them up on his way home from work. Back then, it was more of a joke than anything serious. They'd laugh about winning millions someday, knowing full well it would never happen. Curiosity got the better of her. With trembling fingers, she opened the letter and began to read. At first, the words didn't make sense. Numbers, dates, and phrases like winning ticket swirled before her eyes. Then it hit her. She had won $24 million, not hundreds or thousands, but millions. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, she thought she might faint. This had to be some kind of mistake. People like her didn't win the lottery. That only happened in movies or fairy tales. She read the letter again, slower this time, trying to process what it meant. Apparently, one of Tom's old tickets, a forgotten relic from decades ago, had finally been matched during a routine audit. Because the winnings had gone unclaimed for so long, the state had tracked her down using outdated records. According to the letter, the money was rightfully hers. Maggie sat there stunned, clutching the paper tightly in her hand. Tears welled up in her eyes, though she wasn't sure if they were tears of joy or disbelief, or maybe both. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this windfall could change everything. But as quickly as the excitement bubbled up, doubts crept in. What was she supposed to do with all that money? How would it affect her life, and the lives of those around her? Word spread fast in a place like Pineview. By lunchtime, everyone seemed to know about Maggie's incredible stroke of luck. Staff members congratulated her warmly, offering hugs and pats on the back. Fellow residents gathered around her table, peppering her with questions. "What are you going to do first?" asked Betty, a spry woman in her late 70s who loved crossword puzzles. "Are you moving out of here?" chimed in Harold, a retired teacher who often shared stories of his grandchildren. "I don't know," Maggie admitted, still overwhelmed. "I haven't had time to think about it." Her response did little to quell the buzz. Rumors raced through the halls faster than anyone could keep track of. Some speculated she'd buy a mansion or travel the world. Others joked about her becoming the new benefactor of Pineview, upgrading the facilities and treating everyone to gourmet meals. While most reactions were positive, not everyone was thrilled. A few residents grumbled under their breath, muttering about how unfair it was that someone like Maggie got such a lucky break. Outside Pineview, news of Maggie's win traveled even farther. Neighbors, shopkeepers, and acquaintances from Willow Creek reached out, eager to congratulate her, or perhaps hint at how generous she might become. Social media lit up with posts about the lucky nursing home lady. Friends she hadn't heard from in years suddenly reappeared, reminiscing about old times and casually mentioning how much they admired her resilience. But no reaction mattered more than Daniel's. When Daniel stumbled upon the news online, his initial reaction was disbelief. He scrolled through photos of Maggie sitting in the nursing home lounge, surrounded by smiling staff members holding balloons and banners that read, "Congratulations." His stomach churned. Could it really be true? Had his mother, the same woman he dismissed as a burden, just inherited a fortune? At first, he convinced himself it was fake news or some kind of misunderstanding. Surely there was no way someone like Maggie could win $24 million. But as comments poured in confirming the story, doubt gave way to greed. His mind raced with possibilities. If anyone deserved that money, it was him. After all, hadn't he sacrificed his childhood for her sake? Hadn't he worked tirelessly to build a successful career while she stayed behind in their small town? Fueled by entitlement and desperation, Daniel decided to act. Within hours, he booked a flight back to Willow Creek, determined to reclaim his place in Maggie's life and her bank account. As he packed his bags, visions of luxury danced in his head. He imagined paying off his debts, buying a penthouse, apartment, and finally earning the respect he craved from colleagues and peers. All he had to do was convince Maggie that he cared, that he had made a terrible mistake sending her away. But as Daniel boarded the plane, one question lingered in the back of his mind. Would Maggie forgive him? Or had he burned that bridge beyond repair? Meanwhile, back at Pineview, Maggie remained blissfully unaware of Daniel's plans. She spent her days fielding calls from reporters and lawyers, trying to figure out what came next. Despite the chaos, she couldn't help but feel grateful. For the first time in years, people were paying attention to her. And though she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, she vowed to handle this newfound wealth with grace and wisdom. Daniel arrived at Pineview Nursing Home 2 days after hearing about Maggie's lottery win. He hadn't called ahead or given any warning. He just showed up, unannounced, carrying a bouquet of flowers and a box of chocolates. To anyone watching, he looked like the perfect son, full of remorse and love. But Maggie knew better. She saw right through his act from the moment she spotted him walking down the hallway. "Mom," Daniel said, his voice dripping with forced sweetness as he stepped into her room. "I came as soon as I heard the news." Maggie didn't respond immediately. Instead, she studied him carefully, taking in every detail: the expensive suit, the polished shoes, the rehearsed smile. It was all so calculated, so unlike the boy she had raised. Finally, she spoke, her tone calm but firm. "You didn't come here for me, Daniel. You came because of the money." Her words hit him like a slap across the face. For a split second, his mask slipped, revealing the frustration bubbling beneath the surface. But he quickly recovered, forcing another smile. "That's not true, Mom. I've been thinking about you nonstop since I sent you here. I feel terrible about how things turned out." Maggie sighed, shaking her head slightly. She wanted to believe him. Part of her always would, but experience had taught her better. "If you felt so terrible, why didn't you visit sooner? Why wait until now?" I've been busy," Daniel stammered, clearly caught off guard by her directness. "Work has been crazy and I thought you were settled here. I didn't realize." "You didn't realize what?" Maggie interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "That sending your own mother to a nursing home on her birthday might hurt me? That maybe I needed my son more than ever?" The room fell, silent. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. He hadn't expected this level of resistance. In his mind, Maggie would welcome him back with open arms, grateful for his presence and eager to share her newfound wealth. But the woman sitting across from him wasn't the same person he had dismissed weeks earlier. This Maggie was stronger, wiser, and unwilling to let him manipulate her again. Desperate to regain control of the situation, Daniel changed tactics. He placed the flowers and chocolates on the table beside her bed, then pulled up a chair. "Look, Mom, I know I messed up. I shouldn't have handled things the way I did. But we can fix this, we can start over." Maggie crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "Start over how, exactly?" "Well," Daniel hesitated, choosing his words carefully. With the money, of course. You don't need to stay here anymore. We can find you a nice place, a real home where you'll be comfortable, and I'll make sure you're taken care of properly this time. It was a clever move, painting himself as the hero who could rescue her from her current circumstances. But Maggie wasn't fooled. And what about you, Daniel? What do you get out of this fresh start? His cheeks flushed red, betraying his discomfort. What are you talking about? I just want to help. No, you don't, Maggie said sharply. You want something from me, don't think I don't see it. You've always been like that. Taking without ever giving anything back. The accusation struck a nerve. Daniel leaned forward, his voice tinged with anger. That's not fair. I gave up my whole childhood for you. Do you have any idea how hard it was growing up in that tiny house while everyone else lived in big homes with fancy cars? I worked my ass off to get where I am today, and for what? So you could throw away millions on some stupid dream of independence? Maggie stared at him, her heart breaking all over again. She had known deep down that Daniel resented her sacrifices, but hearing him say it aloud made it painfully real. Still, she refused to let him twist the narrative. You think I owe you something because I raised you? Is that what this is about? Yes, Daniel snapped, losing whatever composure he had left. You raised me, sure, but look at everything I missed out on. You never gave me a chance to live my own life. Everything was always about you, your rules, your expectations, your guilt trips. The words hung heavy in the air, sharp and cutting. Maggie felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away. Crying wouldn't solve anything. Instead, she took a deep breath and met his gaze head-on. If that's how you really feel, then maybe it's best if we go our separate ways. Because I won't let you use me or my money to fill the hole inside you. That's something only you can fix. For a moment, Daniel looked like he might argue further. His jaw clenched and his hands balled into fists. But then, realizing he wasn't going to get anywhere with her, he stood abruptly, knocking over the chair in the process. Fine, he spat. Do whatever you want, see if I care. With that, he stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed through the quiet halls of Pineview, drawing curious glances from staff and residents alike. Maggie sat there for a long time afterward, staring at the empty doorway. Her chest ached, not from anger but from sadness. Despite everything, she still loved her son. She probably always would, but loving someone and trusting them were two very different things. As the days passed, Daniel's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He couldn't let go of the idea that Maggie owed him something, that her windfall should somehow compensate for the life he believed she had ruined. When charm and persuasion failed, he turned to more underhanded tactics. He hired lawyers to argue that Maggie was mentally unfit to manage such a large sum of money due to her age. He even tried bribing staff members at Pineview to gather information against her, hoping to paint her as unstable or irresponsible. But Maggie wasn't alone in this fight. Over the past few weeks, she had formed unexpected friendships with other residents at the nursing home. They rallied around her, offering support and advice when she needed it most. One resident, an elderly man named Walter, who had once been a paralegal, helped her draft letters to contest Daniel's claims. Another woman, Rita, kept a watchful eye on anyone suspicious lurking around the facility, ensuring no one tampered with Maggie's belongings. Together they became a team, a makeshift family united by their shared determination to protect Maggie from Daniel's greed. Slowly but surely, Maggie began to rebuild her confidence. She realized that while she may have lost her biological son, she had gained something equally precious: people who genuinely cared about her well-being. One afternoon, as Maggie sat in the garden enjoying the sunshine, Walter approached her with a stack of papers. I finished reviewing those legal documents, he said, handing them over. Looks like we've got everything covered. All you need to do is sign. Maggie smiled gratefully, flipping through the pages. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of control over her life. No matter what Daniel tried next, she knew she wouldn't face it alone. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to meet them head-on, with strength, dignity, and the unwavering support of her newfound friends. Maggie's life at Pineview had transformed in ways she never imagined. What started as a lonely chapter filled with heartbreak and betrayal turned into a journey of self-discovery, resilience, and unexpected friendships. The residents who once seemed distant or resigned to their fates became her allies, offering wisdom, humor, and unwavering support. Together, they formed a bond that felt more like family than anything Maggie had experienced in years. With Walter's help, Maggie navigated the legal maze surrounding her lottery win. She set up a trust fund to protect her assets, ensuring that no one, not even Daniel, could touch the money without her consent. It wasn't just about safeguarding her wealth, it was about reclaiming control over her life. For decades, she had put others first, sacrificing her own happiness for the sake of her son. Now, for the first time, she prioritized herself. 1 sunny morning. As Maggie sat on a bench in the nursing home garden flipping through real estate listings, Rita joined her. "What are you looking at?" Rita asked curiously, peering over Maggie's shoulder. "Houses," Maggie replied with a grin. "I'm thinking of buying a place where I can start fresh." Rita raised an eyebrow. "You mean leaving Pineview?" "Not because I don't love it here," Maggie clarified quickly. "But I think it's time I made my own choices again. Maybe find a cozy little cottage by the lake, somewhere peaceful." Rita smiled warmly. "That sounds wonderful." "You deserve it, Maggie. After everything you've been through," Maggie nodded thoughtfully. "It's strange, isn't it? A few weeks ago I felt like my life was over, like I didn't matter anymore. But now..." She paused, gazing out at the trees swaying gently in the breeze. "Now I feel like I have a second chance." Word of Maggie's plan spread quickly among the residents. Some were thrilled for her, while others expressed sadness at the thought of her leaving. But everyone agreed on one thing. Maggie deserved this new beginning. Even the staff at Pineview threw her a small farewell party when she announced her decision. There were hugs, laughter, and promises to stay in touch. Though Maggie was moving on, she knew she'd carry the memories and friendships of Pineview with her forever. Meanwhile, Daniel grew increasingly desperate as his attempts to claim part of Maggie's fortune continued to fail. His lawyers' arguments fell flat, dismissed by judges who saw through their thinly veiled schemes. When bribery proved ineffective, he resorted to public manipulation, staging photo ops and giving interviews where he painted himself as the dutiful son wrongfully accused of greed. He posted pictures online of him visiting Maggie at Pineview, though those visits were rare and always tense. In one particularly shameless move, he shared a video of himself hugging her, captioned, "Family means everything." The internet ate it up. Comments flooded in praising Daniel for standing by his mother despite rumors of tension between them. People called him selfless, honorable, and brave. But Maggie knew the truth. Every staged moment, every carefully crafted lie only deepened her resolve to cut ties completely. She refused to let him exploit her story, or her pain, for personal gain. One evening, after another fruitless attempt to convince Maggie to hand over some of her money, Daniel stormed into her room at Pineview. His face was red with frustration, and his voice carried an edge of desperation. "Why are you doing this to me, Mom? Why won't you let me help you?" Maggie looked up from the book she was reading, her expression calm but firm. "Help me? Or help yourself?" Daniel slammed his fist against the wall, startling her momentarily. "This isn't fair. I'm your son. Don't I deserve something after everything I've done for you?" "You didn't do anything for me," Maggie shot back, her voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "Everything you've ever done has been for yourself. Sending me here, trying to take my money, it's all about what you want. Not once have you stopped to think about how I feel." Daniel opened his mouth to argue but stopped short. For the first time he saw the hurt in her eyes, the years of disappointment and heartache reflected back at him. It was a look that silenced him, forcing him to confront the reality of who he had become. But instead of apologizing or showing remorse, he doubled down. "You'll regret this," he muttered darkly before turning and walking out. His words lingered in the air long after he was gone, heavy with bitterness and resentment. Despite Daniel's threats, Maggie moved forward with her plans. She purchased a charming lakeside cottage nestled among tall pine trees, far enough from Willow Creek to ensure privacy, but close enough to visit old friends occasionally. The house was modest yet perfect, a cozy living room with large windows, overlooking the water, a kitchen stocked with essentials, and a porch swing where she could sit and watch the sunset. It was exactly what she had dreamed of. On her first night in the cottage, Maggie sat by the fireplace, sipping tea and reflecting on how far she had come. She thought about the sacrifices she had made for Daniel, the loneliness she endured, and the strength she discovered within herself. Though her relationship with him remained strained, she felt no bitterness, only relief that she had finally taken charge of her destiny. As days turned into weeks, Maggie embraced her new life with joy and gratitude. She traveled, explored hobbies she had neglected for years, and volunteered at local charities. Her generosity touched countless lives, earning her admiration throughout Willow Creek. Strangers approached her in grocery stores and coffee shops, thanking her for her kindness and sharing stories of how her actions inspired them. Even some of Daniel's former colleagues reached out, expressing regret for enabling his toxic behavior. They apologized for turning a blind eye to his mistreatment of Maggie, vowing to be better allies in the future. While Maggie appreciated their sincerity, she also reminded them that change started with accountability. "We all make mistakes," she told them gently. "What matters is learning from them and doing better next time." For Daniel, however, redemption remained elusive. Public opinion began to shift as people uncovered the truth behind his manipulative tactics. Social media posts exposing his hypocrisy went viral, tarnishing his reputation beyond repair. His career suffered as colleagues distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone so openly greedy and dishonest. Desperate to salvage what little respect he had left, Daniel tried one last-ditch effort to reconcile publicly. He showed up at Maggie's cottage uninvited, camera crew in tow, hoping to film a heartfelt reunion. But Maggie was ready for him. Standing on her porch with arms crossed, she addressed him directly. "If you're here for an apology, you're wasting your time. If you're here for forgiveness, that's not mine to give. And if you're here for attention, you won't find it here." Her words struck a chord, not just with Daniel but with everyone watching. By standing up to him, Maggie sent a powerful message about the importance of boundaries, self-worth, and refusing to let others define your value. Her courage inspired countless viewers to speak out against their own struggles with toxic relationships, sparking conversations that rippled far beyond Willow Creek. Though Daniel disappeared from public view shortly afterward, his downfall served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed and entitlement. For Maggie, however, life was sweeter than ever. Surrounded by true friends and cherished memories, she proved that sometimes the greatest victories come not from winning millions, but from finding oneself. As the days stretched into months, Maggie's lakeside cottage became her sanctuary, a place where she could truly be herself, without fear of judgment or betrayal. The mornings were her favorite time of day. She'd wake up early, brew a pot of coffee, and sit on the porch swing with a book in hand. Sometimes she'd simply watch the sun rise over the water, its golden rays dancing across the surface of the lake. It was during these quiet moments that Maggie felt most at peace, as if the universe had finally decided to give her a break after years of hardship. Word of Maggie's transformation spread throughout Willow Creek like wildfire. People marveled at how she had turned her life around, refusing to let bitterness consume her despite everything she had endured. Her generosity knew no bounds. She donated portions of her winnings to local charities, funded scholarships for underprivileged students, and even helped renovate Pineview Nursing Home so that other residents could enjoy improved living conditions. To Maggie, it wasn't about showing off her wealth. It was about giving back to a community that had supported her when she needed it most. Her actions inspired others to follow suit. Neighbors organized food drives, businesses offered discounts to seniors, and volunteers flocked to help wherever they were needed. Willow Creek began to feel like a different town, one united by kindness and compassion rather than gossip and greed. Even those who had once doubted Maggie now looked up to her as a symbol of resilience and grace. But while Maggie thrived, Daniel continued to spiral downward. His public image lay in ruins, tarnished by revelations of his manipulative behavior and relentless pursuit of his mother's fortune. Former colleagues distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone whose reputation had become synonymous with selfishness and deceit. Clients stopped calling, deals fell through, and soon Daniel found himself struggling to keep his head above water both professionally and personally. Desperate to reclaim some semblance of control, Daniel tried one last attempt at redemption. He reached out to Maggie again, this time without cameras or lawyers, just him standing on her doorstep looking weary and defeated. For a moment, Maggie considered turning him away. After all, he had caused her so much pain. But something in his eyes made her pause. Beneath the exhaustion and frustration, there was a flicker of vulnerability, a hint that maybe, just maybe, he was ready to confront the truth. She invited him inside, offering him a cup of tea before sitting down across from him at the kitchen table. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. Finally, Daniel broke it. "I don't know what else to do," he admitted, his voice trembling. "I've lost everything. My job, my friends, my reputation. Everyone thinks I'm a monster." Maggie studied him carefully, searching for signs of sincerity. "Do you blame them?" she asked gently. Daniel hesitated, then shook his head. "No, I brought it on myself. I thought I deserved more. That I deserved your money because of everything I gave up growing up. But now I realize how selfish that sounds. It wasn't just about the money, though, was it?" Maggie pressed, her tone soft but firm. "You resented me for raising you the way I did, for making sacrifices that left you feeling deprived. You blame me for the life you didn't have." Tears welled up in Daniel's eyes as he nodded. "I did, and I took it out on you. I treated you horribly, Mom. I sent you away like you were nothing. And then I tried to take advantage of you when you won the lottery. I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't forgive me either, but I need you to know that I'm sorry." Maggie sighed deeply, her heart aching for the boy she had raised and the man he had become. "Apologies are easy, Daniel. What matters is whether you mean them and whether you're willing to change." "I am," he insisted, leaning forward earnestly. "I want to be better, not just for you, but for myself. I can't undo the past, but I can try to make things right moving forward." For a long moment, Maggie said nothing. She sipped her tea, letting the weight of his words sink in. Part of her wanted to believe him, to see this as an opportunity, to rebuild their relationship. But another part remained cautious, wary of trusting too quickly after everything she had been through. Finally, she spoke. "If you're serious about changing, then prove it. Start small. Be honest with yourself and with others. Stop blaming everyone else for your problems and take responsibility for your actions. And most importantly, remember that love isn't about taking, it's about giving." Daniel nodded slowly, absorbing her advice. "I'll try, Mom, I promise." Though their conversation marked the beginning of a tentative reconciliation, Maggie remained guarded. She agreed to meet with Daniel occasionally, not out of obligation, but because she genuinely hoped he could turn his life around. Yet she also set clear boundaries, refusing to let him move back into her life until he demonstrated consistent growth and accountability. In the meantime, Maggie focused on building connections with people who valued her for who she was, not what she had. She reconnected with old friends, joined a book club, and even started volunteering at a nearby animal shelter. Each new experience brought her closer to understanding that happiness didn't come from material wealth or external validation, it came from within. One crisp autumn afternoon, Maggie sat on her porch with Walter and Rita, who had driven out to visit. They laughed and reminisced about their time together at Pineview, sharing stories that made them laugh until their sides hurt. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Maggie felt a profound sense of gratitude. Do you ever think about how different things might have been if you hadn't won the lottery? Walter asked curiously. Maggie smiled softly. Sometimes. But honestly, I don't think the money changed me. It just gave me the freedom to choose my own path. Winning the lottery didn't make me happy. Finding myself did. Rita nodded thoughtfully. And look at you now. You're living proof that second chances are possible, if you're brave enough to take them. Maggie gazed out at the lake, her heart swelling with emotion. Though her journey had been far from easy, she wouldn't trade it for anything. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every triumph had shaped her into the person she was today. Resilient, compassionate, and unafraid to stand up for herself. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Maggie realized something important. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or excusing the harm done. It meant choosing to move forward without carrying the weight of resentment. Whether Daniel succeeded in turning his life around remained to be seen. But for now, Maggie was content, knowing she had done everything in her power to guide him toward redemption. Years passed, and Willow Creek continued to thrive under the ripple effects of Maggie's generosity. The town had transformed, not just physically with renovated parks, better schools, and a revitalized community center, but emotionally, too. People treated each other with more kindness, more patience. Conversations at the local diner often revolved around acts of goodwill rather than gossip or complaints. And at the heart of it all was Maggie, whose quiet strength and unwavering optimism inspired everyone she touched. Maggie herself had settled into a rhythm that suited her perfectly. Her lakeside cottage became a hub of activity, friends dropping by for tea, neighbors borrowing tools from her shed, kids playing tag in the yard while their parents chatted on the porch. She spent her days gardening, reading, and volunteering, always finding ways to stay connected to the world around her. Life wasn't perfect. There were still moments of loneliness, especially when she thought about the family she might have had. But it was fulfilling in ways she never imagined. Daniel, on the other hand, remained a complicated figure in Maggie's life. After their emotional conversation, he made sincere efforts to change. He moved to a smaller apartment in another town, took a job as an assistant manager at a hardware store, and began attending therapy sessions to work through his anger and resentment. It wasn't easy. Old habits die hard, and there were days when he slipped back into his selfish patterns. But slowly, painfully, he started to rebuild his life and himself. Every few months, Daniel would visit Maggie at the cottage. Their meetings were awkward at first, filled with long silences and cautious small talk. Over time, however, they grew more comfortable with each other. They talked about books, movies, and even shared memories from Daniel's childhood, things they hadn't discussed in years. Though their relationship was far from what it once was, there was a glimmer of hope. For Maggie, it was enough to see him trying. For Daniel, it was a lifeline, a chance to prove that he could be someone worth loving again. One summer evening, as the sun dipped low over the lake, Maggie and Daniel sat together on the porch swing. Fireflies blinked lazily in the twilight, and the air carried the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Maggie sipped her lemonade, watching as Daniel fidgeted nervously beside her. "Mom," he said finally, breaking the comfortable silence, "I've been thinking about everything. About how I treated you, how I threw away so many chances to make things right." Maggie turned to look at him, her expression soft but curious. And Daniel hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I know I can't undo the past. I'll carry that regret with me forever. But I want you to know that I'm grateful for everything you did for me, even when I didn't deserve it. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for you." Tears welled up in Maggie's eyes, though she smiled through them. "That means a lot, Daniel. More than you realize. I also wanted to say..." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I understand now why you stood your ground, why you refused to let me take advantage of you. You taught me something important, that love doesn't mean giving people what they want. It means helping them become who they're supposed to be. Maggie reached over and placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle yet firm. You're getting there, Daniel. That's all anyone can ask for, to keep moving forward one step at a time. They sat in silence after that, listening to the crickets chirp and the water lap against the shore. There was no need for further words. The moment spoke volumes. For the first time in years, Maggie felt a sense of closure, not because everything was fixed, but because she could finally see a future where healing was possible. As the seasons changed, so did the dynamics between mother and son. Daniel began inviting Maggie to events in his new town, a farmer's market, a 4th of July parade, a holiday party at his workplace. At first, Maggie attended reluctantly, unsure of how she'd fit into his new life. But soon she found herself enjoying these outings, marveling at the person Daniel was becoming. He laughed more, listened better, and seemed genuinely interested in others' well-being. It wasn't the fairy tale reunion Maggie had dreamed of when Daniel was young, but it was real, and that made it infinitely more valuable. Back in Willow Creek, Maggie's story became legendary. Locals spoke of her not just as the woman who won $24 million, but as the woman who showed them the true meaning of resilience and grace. Parents used her example to teach their children about kindness and integrity. Strangers approached her in stores to thank her for inspiring them to face their own challenges head-on. Even Daniel's downfall served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed and entitlement, reminding people to cherish relationships over material wealth. On her 75th birthday, Maggie hosted a small gathering at her cottage. Friends, neighbors, and former Pineview residents came together to celebrate her life and legacy. There were no grand speeches or elaborate decorations, just laughter, music, and plates piled high with homemade food. As Maggie looked around at the faces of those she loved, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. This was her family now, not bound by blood but by shared experiences and mutual respect. When the party wound down and guests began heading home, Daniel lingered behind. He helped Maggie clear the dishes and tidy up the living room before joining her outside on the porch. The night was cool and the stars shone brightly overhead. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said softly, handing her a small wrapped gift. "I hope you like it." Maggie raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What is it?" "Open it and see." She unwrapped the present carefully, revealing a framed photo of the two of them taken during one of Daniel's recent visits. In the picture, they were sitting side by side on this very porch, smiling warmly at the camera. Beneath the photo was an inscription, "To Mom, the strongest, kindest person I know. Thank you for never giving up on me." Maggie's eyes filled with tears as she hugged Daniel tightly. "This is the best gift anyone has ever given me," she whispered. "Thank you." For Daniel, the gesture was symbolic, a way of acknowledging how far they had both come. For Maggie, it was proof that forgiveness and redemption were possible, even after years of pain and misunderstanding. Together, they had weathered storms and emerged stronger on the other side. In the end, Maggie's journey wasn't about winning millions or escaping hardship. It was about discovering the power of self-worth, the importance of boundaries, and the transformative nature of second chances. She proved that sometimes the greatest victories aren't measured in dollars or accolades, but in the lives we touch and the courage we find within ourselves. As she sat on the porch that night, surrounded by fireflies and starlight, Maggie knew one thing for certain. Life was unpredictable, messy, and often unfair, but it was also beautiful, and she wouldn't trade it for anything.